pictures. This is because of Shrivasa Thakur. Here's the Panchatattva, and here's Shrivasa Thakur chanting. And but what I really want, this is a picture of a Shrivasanga. I've got to get some other pictures, but this one I did happen to have. So in Navadvipa, and they'll make more sense when we talk. But just to get that out, thanks, Prabhu. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Well, we're off to a good start. I forgot Mahanidhi's Samadhi book. Oh, that's okay. We do, right there. That's handy. But I can say, just to get started, Shrivasa Thakur, also referred to as Shrivasa Pandit, is a member of the Panchatattva. So of the Lord Chaitanya is the Supreme Personality of Godhead in 5 features. The Tattva means truth. I know I don't want to spend too much time on that, but the different, God is the Supreme Personality, the Avatari. Thanks a lot, Prabhu. And then you have anyway, in that Tattva, those 5 categories or aspects of the absolute truth. You have Shrivasa Thakur, who represents the Jiva soul, the individual, us. And he's also, in that perfection of the Jiva soul, he's Narada Muni. So that's a little esoteric, but there it is. Well, let's read this. Oh, and queued up for me, thank you. Shrivasa Pandit, 5th member of the Panchatattva. That we already said. Lived in Navadvip before the advent of Lord Chaitanya. He was somewhere in age between Lord Chaitanya and Advaitacharya, but he was in parental ras, he was in that, or at least in that age range. Meeting with Advaitacharya, he studied Bhagavatam and prayed for an incarnation of the Supreme Lord, just like Advaitacharya. He's an assisting, calling down Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because only an avatar of Krishna, this is why they're praying, could establish, of course Krishna came himself, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not an avatar, could establish the Vaishnavism amongst the staunch atheists, logicians, and proud pandits harassing Nadi at the time. Malini, the wife of Shrivasa, was a constant friend of Sachi Devi. She served Nimai as his nurse. She's considered Ambika from Krishna Lila. When Lord Vishwambara appeared, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared, all the hearts of all the devotees were filled with parental affection, Vatsala Bhava. Gaurachandra loved Malini and Shrivasa as a second mother and father. Shrivasa Anga was located 200 yards north of Nimai's bara, or house. Shrivasa Pandit's palatial home had large comfortable rooms, a high protective boundary wall, and a lush, densely planted garden and groves. We should have a little garden, a little grove here. This is nice for the temple. You read about temples that have nice gardens, and there it creates a nice atmosphere and flowers for the deities. Every night, Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu and his dearest friends would enjoy ecstatic kirtan here and taste the mellow of Vrindavan. Here, the raging Muslim... Well, maybe I'll just paraphrase this. So they would have kirtan every night, roaring kirtans in the house of Shrivasa Thakur. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as a small boy, middle of the night, even though everything's locked up, so they didn't want it's a Muslim king, and, they didn't want to, when you're living in the water, don't pick a fight with a crocodile. Chanakya Pandit says, so they were trying to keep things kind of under wraps, But still, and people would hear the madungas and the kartals and Hari Bol, and they would see people the next morning, with chandan and just floating in ecstasy. So they knew something was going on. So they would lock it up tight. And then they would, in the middle of the night, they'd have their kirtan. And little baby Nimai would appear in the middle of the kirtan. How did he get in? How did he get away from his house? It's the middle of the night. How did he get in? And they'd say, oh, you're a sweet little boy. What are you doing here? He would say, well, you're calling me. So it would come regularly. It was a regular event, So there's that. And it's also where the Chand Kazi, and I learned a new detail listening to those Gaur Pranim, the Chaitanya Charitamrita lectures. If you go to GBC SBT for Strategic Planning Team, gbcsbt.com, they have a series of 70 lectures given, talks, tours of the Holy Dham, so many senior devotees speaking about Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's all a run-up. It was planned as a run-up for Gaur Pranim. And it is just full of so much nectar. What does they say about Lay's potato chips? Bet you can't eat just one. The problem with these lectures is, once you get started, you can't. Next thing you know, it's, whatever. So I highly recommend you take the time, check this out. It's fun. It's got everything you could possibly. Anyway, there it is. So at Srivasa with these nocturnal kirtans and baby Nimai showing up, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in the house of Srivasa Thakur, that's where the Chand Kazi came. And he came with 4 boatloads of soldiers. So just picture the scene. He showed up because the local Hindus were complaining, this is not our... the neighbors were saying, they're calling out, they must be hungry, they're not getting enough to eat, this is not our Hindu dharma, you have to pay the Brahmins and you do silent meditation, and what's all this ruckus, and what's this bob and ecstasy, what's it's got to do with anything? So this is where the Chand Kazi showed up and broke the madungas. So this is and Prabhupada said that at this place we can pray for the preaching mood. These are not ordinary places. These are portals where the mercy of the Lord pours down. And we should take advantage of this atmosphere. So Prabhupada said, when we go to Srivasa, we can pray, amongst so many other things, we can also pray that let me get infused with the preaching spirit and compassion for the conditioned souls, and that enthusiasm, let me go out and give mercy. So that's a special function of Srivasa. And what else to say? This is also... I'm going to skip a. We know the story of the Chand Kazi, so I'm not going to go on with that. Shrivasa Pandit and Shri Advaita Acharya, the learned chiefs of the Brahmin community, dedicated all their energy to Lord's Harinam Sankirtan movement. They surrendered their bodies, minds, homes, friends, families, and all possessions, and you'll hear about that in just a minute, to Lord Gaura's service. They knew no other gods or goddesses. Is Srivasa Pandit where they put the Durga Puja stuff out in front of the door? Yeah, so, somebody like you paint, I don't know what, graffiti on somebody's house or, whatever, I don't want to mention it, but different things kids do on Halloween or whatever, So, somebody to stain the reputation of Srivasa Pandit, because they were envious that they weren't being invited into these, because they weren't qualified and they wouldn't understand and they just find fault and so many different things. So they put the Durga Puja for worshiping Durga. Was it Durga or Kali? It was Durga. Yeah. And like hibiscus flower, these different things, red hibiscus. So he came out, he was completely unfazed, and he says, oh, just see, let everyone know that I've given up my Vaishnavism. And all the Brahmins said, they all knew his status, and they came and they apologized and cleaned the place. So a lot of far out things happen at this Shrivasanga. It's where the Mahaprakash was displayed, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for 23 hours manifested, when he called Mukunda and said, I'll see you in 1,000 years, and showed himself to be, Hanuman, Lord Ram, all the different avatars, all the different Leela avatars, Purusha avatars. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sat on the altar and showed that all these things are coming from him. So and that happened at Shrivasanga. So it's a very important place, and he's a great devotee. So there it goes. Shrivas Pandit represents the marginal living entity, Tatashta Jiva. The devotees headed by Shrivas are described as Lord Chaitanya's face, eyes, hands. It's a little esoteric for us. They all took part in Sri Gaur Sundar's pastimes. With them, Lord Gauranga spread the Sankirtan movement. Shrivas Pandit is Narada Muni, it says here, the intergalactic preacher and constant associate of the Lord. So that's something about Shrivas. Also Shrivas, to show his complete surrender, during one of those kirtans, one of his sons passed away. Left his body. And Shrivas was so, and we'll read about that in a minute, about Dhira, he was so sense-controlled and so in tune that to not disturb the mood of Lord Gauranga in his kirtan. He didn't say anything, didn't do it, told all his members, just, all his family members, just keep it quiet, But somehow or other, I don't know, anyway, whatever, Lord Gauranga became aware of it. And Lord Gauranga went where the boy was, put his hand on the chest, and Shrivas, whatever the boy's name, you remember the boy's name? You come back. And so wherever he was going, like when you rewind the tape, rewind the tape, boom, that Jiva soul came back in the body, the dead son of Shrivas, and, was a little disoriented by, and he began preaching to that, everyone's got a certain amount of time that they're given to live in a condition. Just like you wind up a clock, you wind up a clock, it runs out. And when it stops, it stops. So we all have a certain number of breaths, a certain amount of life in a body, and when the clock runs out, bingo, you can, whatever it may be, you could spend all your time over at this Orange Crush, that fitness place, but when your number's up, your number's up. So the boy was explaining all of this and pacified all the family members, and everyone became appeased. And then Lord Chaitanya blessed him, and he went off. And the kirtan started again, and everyone was happy. So this is gives you a little flavor of Srivas Thakur's mood and his tattva, his status, and a little bit of the pastimes. So that's something about Srivas Thakur. I wanted to say, because today is Easter, so we have a duty to say something. And it's true. We should say something about Lord Jesus' position. He always says, Son of God. That the Father, so Father and Son. Imagine, if you love your Father and everybody ignores your Father and starts worshiping you, how do you feel about that? They go, no. This is stop. This is my Father, and I'm the Son. Well, wait a minute. Says the Father and I are one, isn't it? So, as we'll read in the purport, the purport to the verse, which we're going to get to in a sec, it's a qualitative equality. So, what does this mean? Anyone know when it says it's talking about the liberated soul? It has a qualitative equality other than Dravida Prabhu. Does anyone, I'll let you have a few, but you can't have them all. Does anyone know what's an analogy? What are we talking about? Qualitative. I don't know how many times I can give you a hint. Qualitative equality. Anyone want to take a whack at it? What's an example? Acha. Ocean drop? Oh, so you mean we all become one and that we no longer drops? What does it mean? What's the analogy? Defend your answer, my friend. He said the ocean and a drop. Defend your answer. Exactly so. If you study the drop, there's so much, whatever, salt and I don't know what, sodium, this, that, so many different things are in the drop. They're also in the ocean. But what is the difference, someone else? We said qualitative. What's another word that begins with a Q that defines somebody else? Anyone want to take a whack at it? Same in quality. Different in quantity. So the thing is that they misunderstand the whole thing. Sure, the Father and I are one. Stop. It's distracting. Sure, the Father... Stop. It's distracting. Sure, the Father and I are one. Oh, is it dead? No. So the Father and I are one. Sure. But the thing is, simultaneously one and different, achinta beta beta tattva, so we can appreciate the refined understanding of the Bhagavatam, of what it means when they're one. So yes, Father and Son. What else? The thing is, what about no one goes to the Father but through me? Well, what does that mean? Well, there it is. You're all bogus, you're all heathens, you're all savages. What does it mean? Anyone, any of the brahmacharis want to take a whack at it, other than Dravida? Anyone want to take a whack at it? Because I know you know, I want them to exercise their brains. I want them to exercise their brains. Yeah, you approach God through a guru, but he's saying he's the only one. In that place, I'm the only one who knows, I grew up in Laguna Beach, and Krishna saved me. So I can tell you, I'm the only one who knows the way to my father's house. Well, that's the truth. But that doesn't mean that my sister doesn't know, and my brother doesn't know, and my aunts and uncles don't know. So many other people know. But, amongst the particular audience, I'm the only one who knows. And the only way is pure devotional service. Sure. There's only one way. That's right. And all the Shastras, what is it? I just was thinking about this verse. Narayana paro yogo, Narayana paratapaha, Narayana param jnanam, Narayana param gatihi. That whether you're yoga or jnana or tapasya, hey, there's only one way. And that all of those are servants of and meant to bring you to the point of bhav, of bhakti, of love. And that love takes you to Krishna. And only bhakti, devotion, surrender, service will take you back to Godhead. So sure, there's only one way. And he was the only one presenting at the time, but it doesn't, So they just, again, it's not nuanced. It's not deep. Anyone know Prabhupada's classic example? About if I look up a word, you want to take a whack? Dravida, you want to take a whack at it? I'm sorry, I caught you the one time. I apologize. I'm not trying to give you a hard time. Are we deprecating? Are we saying the Bible is of no value? Are we saying it doesn't hold the truth? And what is an example of, if I look up the definition of, and I'm going to stop there. Yeah, I can have a pocket dictionary, and it'll give one of my favorite things. Look up pain or suffering. You'll find, 3 or 4, synonyms, explanation. Look it up in the Oxford Unabridged on pain. Trust me, my friend. You'll have 1.5, 2 pages of synonyms, and it's a real eye-opener about this material nature. So they're both true. Or Prabhupada gives the example, you go to mathematics in elementary school, 1 + 1 is 2. That's true. Go to advanced physics, or what is it, our Sariputta, theoretical statistics, spare me, my head will explode. So, but still 1 + 1 is 2, I think. in statistical physics. All right, so there it is. So that's a little something on Jesus. And Prabhupada said the thing is that what's the problem? Why don't they realize him? Because they don't follow. And there's the classic, and if you ever have a chance to, when Prabhupada meets Cardinal Danilou, who, anyway, I don't want to bounce on it, it's Easter, try to be a little gentle. But if you look, you can ask me after class about how Cardinal Danilou left his body and where they found it. You can ask him about that later on. So he's meeting with Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada's saying, thou shalt not kill. It doesn't say thou shalt not murder. It says thou shalt not kill. If you love me, keep my commandments. And Prabhupada said, then why are you killing so many animals? You're killing, at least don't kill your mother, the cow. Your mother nursed you, breast milk, and then the cow takes over and gives you milk, and you slit her throat? What is that all about? And you watch, and Prabhupada, how does a little dog, if there's a fight, it's Prabhupada's analogy, and a big dog and a little dog get into a fight, how does the little dog win? Little dog surrenders, the big dog will eat him for lunch. That's one case where you don't surrender. Nice guess, I appreciate it. I don't want to discourage you. It was a good guess. Better than anybody else. Anyone else want to take a shot at it? Good guess. Acha Balaram. Prabhupada says he bites onto one place. Ah! And he does not let go. If he gets a good vein, finally the old dog just, bleeds out, and that's it, So Prabhupada says you find one weakness in their philosophy and you just keep hammering. And you watch Prabhupada do it. He does it and so you watch him do it with Cardinal Danilou, and Prabhupada will not let the guy off the hook. And you watch, if you see under the table, Cardinal Danilou's leg starts bouncing. You can watch his knee. He's getting, and Prabhupada will let him off the hook. And finally he says, oh, Swamiji, can't we talk about higher principles? Anyone know Prabhupada's answer? Prabhupada says, yeah, where's the question of higher principles when you can't understand or practice the lower principles? And finally, he concedes. Prabhupada just gets him, So, that's an extreme example because the guy was, and Prabhupada was, you're claiming to be a leader, and anyway. So if you want to understand, and there are many, we can learn from the Christians, and we can learn from Jesus. Prabhupada points out, that Jesus didn't preach that long. Sometimes they say 3 years, sometimes they 6 at the max, but I think people lean towards 3 or 4 years only. He didn't preach that long. He was a real truth to power, and it didn't, and power came down. So the point is that, but Prabhupada said here, almost 2,000 years later, or whatever it is, he's still, his teachings, and no matter how they've tried to hack it apart, he's still got a powerful message and influencing people. So Prabhupada said, we offer our deepest respects. And we can learn that deep compassion and according to the gospel, even on the cross, he says, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. So that Prabhupada says we can learn that forgiveness, to be bold. He goes into the, the synagogue, and they get the money changers and all the stuff. The temple had become a place of just business, and you go there and do some sacrifice. The karma kanda. I do the jaga, I get the benefit. There's no question of purifying my heart, or they confess on Friday so they can have a good time on the weekend. Clear the slate. Get ready to go. So, he chased them all out. So, very, very powerful preacher. So Prabhupada said we can learn to be bold, we can learn to be fearless, and which turns that from being arrogance, we can learn to be humble and so compassionate and forgiving. So that's a little something on Easter about Jesus. Prabhupada said about the resurrection, and we know the yogis, they can, there's examples of yogis living under the water, and yogis living in the, for so many things. Prabhupada said at Kumbh Mela, there's yogis that are hundreds of years old. They show up at Kumbh Mela. So Prabhupada said some of them just come from the Himalayas, and they come all the way down in the Ganga, bathe at the confluence underwater, and go all the way back underwater. You don't even see them. So these mystic powers, Prabhupada said that Jesus came from Siddhaloka. We were reading about, Balaram was talking about Narada Muni and Siddhaloka, that he was actually a perfect mystic. And Jiva soul, liberated soul, empowered. Prabhupada said he's a Shaktivesh avatar. Shakti means empowered. He was empowered by the potency of the Supreme Lord. And what else? So what I was going to say is, Prabhupada describes that the yogis can suspend their breath. So crucifixion and all that, he suspended his breath, and they took him off the cross, and he revived himself. Well, that's a little more detailed explanation of the Easter, because this is the day they said Good Friday is the day he was crucified, and today is the day he after 3 days he arose. And we accept that. We have no problem. Rather, we appreciate and offer our deep respect. So that's something on Easter. And now, what to do at 8:26? I guess we should give it a shot. So I will just read the verse, if I can find it in my little flea brain. Okay. So this is the Tatraikagramanadiro Govinda Charanambujam Vimukta Sanganu Bhajan Bhaktya Tat Samyatam Magat. Having undergone austerities and penance at Kapila Ashram, King Prachinabhari attained full liberation from all material designations. He constantly engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, and he attained a spiritual position qualitatively equal to that of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's the Prabhupada's purport. There is special significance in the words Tat Samyatam Agat. The king attained the position of possessing the same status or same form of that of the Lord. This definitely proves that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is always a person. Prabhupada said to Bhavananda, and Bhavananda told us, we know the Shikshastakam prayers that please make me an atom at your lotus feet. So Prabhupada said, what is significant about this verse? In this context, anyone want to know? Prabhupada said, Prabhupada said that the Lord has lotus feet. So you become an insignificant, let me become, surrendered servant, but that the Lord has lotus feet. He has this transcendental form. This definitely proves that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is always a person. In his impersonal feature, he is the rays of his transcendental body. When a living entity attains spiritual perfection, he also attains the same type of body known as Satchidananda Vigraha, Brahma Samhita 5.1. This spiritual body never mixes with the material elements. And what's an analogy? Can someone think of matter and spirit not mixing? Oil and water. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that this material world is a dictionary for the spirit. And all around us, if you have the eyes to see, how can God be ever present and still have a form? Well, what's something we see every day? Generally speaking, depending on the weather, other than Dravida. Give others a chance. The sun. You can put, there's the sun, you can see the form, and yet it's all pervasive. So Prabhupada says in so many ways the material world is a dictionary for the spirit. So, who said something? So what's an example of, because Prabhupada says here, the spiritual body never mixes with material elements. Well, what's an example? Jesus says to be Well, Bhagavad is in the world but not of the world. Is that Jesus? I think that's Jesus. It'll do. What's an example? Coconut. Coconut. I hadn't thought of a coconut. Why? Very good. You have the husk, and when it's ripe, it separates, and Prabhupada says you can shake it. That's how, you watch the Indian Mataji's. They want to know it's good for grating coconut. Now shake the thing. And if it's separate, okay, good, So, or oil and water, or as Sadhaputta said, because he spent all those years in England at Oxford, the raisin pudding. The raisins never merge with the pudding. So we're separate. In it, surrounded by it, immersed with it, covered by it, but not it. That we read. Although in conditional life, the living entity is surrounded by material elements: earth, water, fire, air, sky, mind, intelligence, and ego. He remains always aloof from them. In other words, the living entity can be liberated from the material condition at any moment, provided he wishes to do so. That's the thing. Balaram's great class yesterday. We have to want it. You have to fight for it. What does Krishna say in Bhagavad Gita about fighting? Armed with yoga, stand and fight. Krishna's not cheap. You got to stand and you got to fight. You got to have a backbone. I remember that this SanDiego High School up here, which is a Christian high school, it's connected with UCSD, which is, it's nice. It has a Catholic basis, And he came with, the professor came one time, the high school class, but it was advanced placement, his best students, And so it had nothing to do with me being the speaker. It's just because of the message of Bhagavatam. They were asking, one life only, but, we explained, karma, reincarnation. One of the kids says, well, that's the first time I got a good answer. So he started to lose the class. So the guy was flipping because, they were hearing the message of Bhagavad Gita, and they would think, well, that makes sense. Well, that makes sense. Well, okay, I never understood what that meant in the Bible. Now that makes sense. Okay, great, Finally he said, oh, students, I think the bus is here. So they all bailed out. But he said that this, chanting, and this is many years ago. Now it's a much different culture and climate that we live in. But this vegetarian diet, low protein, and the chanting makes you weak-willed and, brainwashing. I said, hang on a minute. I was a temple president. I said, you can spend a day in my office. I said, spend an hour in my office. You'll never meet a more strong-willed, independent thinking. You got to convince them to wash the pots this way or that way. It's a whole philosophical discussion. I said, you'll never meet to turn your back on the material nature and the whole material current. The average American under hypnosis can remember over 654 commercial jingles. Coke is the real thing? No. Nike, just do it. Hey, shouldn't you think before you do it? All that's rattling around in the brain, And to turn your back on all that? Turn your back, sometimes you have to turn your back on your family members. And, in your big career, our Divya Gyan, who gave up his beautiful girlfriend and his red Ferrari. You turn your back on that, which everybody's chasing after. That takes courage. That takes strength. So there it is. And, well, I guess we're just going to wrap up. I'll keep going. I finished Prabhupada's purport. The material environment is called Maya. According to Krishna, Daivihe Gunamaye Mam Hare Krishna. I'll just say the verse. I'm tired. It's a long story. 4 hours sleep with my local neighbors. This divine energy of mind, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome. But those who surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. As soon as the living entity engages in the trance of loving service of the Lord, he immediately attains freedom from all material conditions. Sagunan samatityaitan brahmabhuyaya kalpate. From the Gita. In the material state, the living entity is on the Jiva Bhuta platform, bound up. But when he endeavors when he renders devotional service to the Lord, he's elevated to the Brahmabhuta platform. On the Brahmabhuta platform, the living entity is liberated from material bondage. Does he merge? Does he pop? What's Prabhupada's next sentence? Perfection of the thing. On the Brahmabhuta platform, liberation, that's the goal of everything? No, my friends. You're on the doorstep. That's the beginning. That's the foundational principle. Where Bhagavad Gita ends, surrender unto me, Chaitanya Charitamrita and Bhagavatam begin. What is service? So Prabhupada says here, on the Brahmabhuta platform, we're almost done, the living entity is liberated from material bondage, and he engages in the service of the Lord. In this verse, now this is the point I wanted to get to. It's a fantastic conclusion by Prabhupada. Where was I? In this verse, the word dhira is sometimes read as vira. Anyone know what vira means for extra points? Hero. The word dhira means sober, and vira means hero. One who is struggling against Maya is a hero, and one who is sober enough to understand his position is a dhira. Without becoming sober or heroic, one cannot attain spiritual salvation. And I wanted to read one line from this verse. Govinda Charanam Bhujam. Dravida Prabhu. Now's your turn. What's it mean? The lotus feet. So if one knows what is the impetus to fight? What is the impetus to be that hero? To be sober. What's the opposite of sober? To be intoxicated. And what is it? Janmaishvaya Shruti Shibir Edamana Madapuman Navharti Adatum. What is it? Toma Kinchana Gocharam. So Janmaishvaya Shruti Shibir. One's birth, one's opulence. Janmaishvaya Shruti, one's personal beauty. Shri, to be very learned. Well, I went to Harvard. I mean, spare me. I met a professor who was teaching at Harvard with Tamal Krishnamash. I was standing next to Tamal Krishnamash, and he said, well, I'm a professor at Harvard. He said, yeah, most people graduated. You're still there running around in circles, grading papers, The smart people got out. He's proud I'm still in Harvard, So, anyway, the point I'm making is that people are intoxicated by if one's intoxicated, one has to be sober. One has to understand what did Sanatana Goswami, who was profoundly qualified, wealthy. He was the prime minister for Nawab Hussain Shah. And Nawab Hussain Shah, the East and West Bengal were the size of France. And the gross national product of Bengal at the time was greater than that of France. Now, wrap your mind around that. Sanatana Goswami was the prime minister for Nawab Hussain Shah, and Nawab Hussain Shah was the king of Bengal. And Bengal, East-West Bengal, was richer than the gross product of France at the time, not counting the colonies. So, and the British, Bengal was, I don't want to get too far afield because we're wrapping up, but Bengal was so opulent and beautiful that that's where the British put their capital, Calcutta. So, and before that time, under the Nawab Hussain Shah, Sanatana Goswami was the prime minister. So imagine his influence, imagine his power, imagine the level of his sophistication. I mean, just how he got out of the jail, by bribing the jail keeper, and what I do about the body, when the Nawab comes back, and tell him that I went down to the river, and and I fell in and drowned. Okay, well, where's the body? Tell him I had my iron shackles so the body sank. He gave him gave him an alibi, the jailer, gave him an alibi, gave him a few extra gold coins, Expert, manager. So learned, so refined, such a scholar, wealthy, powerful. And what did he say to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? What was his first question? Kayami. I don't know who I am and I don't know why I'm suffering. So to be sober, what is my actual position? What can I take with me when I drop dead? You know, we enter the world naked and you leave the world naked. You come in, you can't control your bodily functions. You go out, you can't control your bodily function. You come in completely dependent on others. You leave this world completely dependent on others. What was the gain? You know? You ran around in circles like a hamster on a wheel. But where you came in, you left the same way. And you have no idea where you're going. So a sober person says, wait a minute. So that's sober, he's not intoxicated, and one's a hero. So, and what is the impetus for all of this? He understands, what's the line again? He understands that the Lord, the beautiful Govinda, the pleaser of all the senses, has his sublime lotus feet. So we can in there, so what should we be? Should we be mudhas? Should we be Maya, you know? What should we be? We should be two words. If you remember anything about this class, what are the two words? What's one of the words you should remember? Dhira, which means sober. And what's the other one? Vira, which means hero. So the devotees are heroes, rare souls. Okay, thank you. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Well, that was a smorgasbord.